Okay. Hello and welcome. My name is Chris, and I'm here for Steel Tiger Media. Um, we are starting today the first stream in a series of interviews with some of our current steel fighting content creators. And I'm here with Alex, aka Bear Blackspear, from his YouTube channel. And hopefully, we're gonna have some interesting conversations and talk about the future of video in Armored Combat. But first, Alex, why don't you introduce your background a bit more?
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Rashi. I'm the captain of Le Dog de Montréal, and I am the host of Bear Blackspear, the YouTube channel, and the Facebook page. So, in the event that you're interested in getting some high-level technical breakdowns for Boohurt-related content, feel free to follow me both on YouTube and Facebook.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time because I don't want this to go super long for you. So, first question is how would you describe the state of armored combat video in North America today?
That's an interesting question. So, being somebody who reviews a lot of content as both a spectator, a competitor, and a content creator, I find that having like really good quality video is important for us to be able to advance as a community because it allows us to be able to view what's going on in competition uh, precisely, and it's those details that you can only glean from a properly televised or properly videographed competition that will really enable like a high level analysis, which is my thing in particular. So I would say that that's one of our major failings in North America in particular. If you compare us with European events, either Battle of Nations, WMFC, or Buhurt League, you see that they're much higher level in terms of the quality of video that they provide to us, not only in terms of commentary and analysis that takes place live during the event, but also in terms of the quality of the video itself, in terms of camera angles, in terms of overall view of the field, and just in terms of overall quality and clarity. I would say that one of the biggest downsides to the North American, I guess I would say like video scene, is that there's no video community, there's no media community, there's nobody who really sets like a standard, either in terms of a league level, like you see with Buhurt League, for example, as they require a certain level of video quality in order for your event to be able to qualify in the first place for Buhurt League.
Hmm.
But we don't have anything like that here, and we get the majority of the video that we get is volunteer video, which is like great. I'm not knocking anybody, like
Hmm.
that's awesome, but
Oh, so much
the
better than
downside is
nothing.
that we well, no, that's why I'm saying, like, yeah,
Yeah.
anybody who's willing to take their personal time to video our event rather than fighting or doing, something else is doing a huge service to the community because we're able to, see the event after the fact. We can show it to our friends. We can use it to market the sport itself. It's integral to the advancement of any competitive sport that there's like, a library of the events of the sport, like a history that we can follow so that we know where we came from and we can see where we're going.
Hmm.
And I think that's very important.
Yeah, I'd also love to see something, laid out more organized. So like going forward, I'm gonna do my best to catalog everything in a way that if you want to go back and look, you're not gonna spend a ton of time trying to find what you're looking for.
Well, I mean, I think that's also a symptom of us having so many different leagues, and every league has its own, series of clubs which set up their own series of tournaments. There's no like overriding, like standard that we have to all adhere to.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I particularly like about Boohurt League is that they set a standard. They say, okay, well, if you want to qualify for any event, your stuff has to be on video so that like we can see the video, and it has to be good enough that we could see it, so that we can then rate the fight and make sure that the scores that you're submitting are accurate, and we can make sure that the refing and all of the nuances and stuff that go into it are legitimate. And this is important specifically for international events because Boohurt League takes place primarily in Europe, but
Mm.
now we have teams in North America, and I think maybe even South America or Central America that can participate in Boohurt League. So for their stuff to count, they absolutely have to capture it on video, and it has to be good enough quality that like a dude across the world who wasn't there understands exactly what's happening. I think that's one of the big failings of the North American fighting community is that there's a lot of cell phone footage, particularly vertical cell phone footage. Like,
Hmm.
for the love of God, I don't understand why people don't just like turn their phone sideways. It
I blame
makes it much easier
Instagram.
to film. But regardless, like, turn your phone sideways.
Hmm.
I don't want to see no vertical nothing. But even when even when events are like more professionally captured, or when there's more effort put into them, like somebody's using a tripod or something, like,
Hmm.
I find that there's too much of an effort to guide the viewership in terms of like focusing the camera on, a certain part of the list, or like zooming into like a particular engagement, when in our sport, because there's so much dynamism on the field and there's so much that can happen all over the place, you need to have like, a high enough level view in order to be able to see the entirety of the field. I think that could be solved with like a picture in picture kind of a thing, where you have like a
Hmm.
camera A that surveys the entire field and a camera B that looks at a small engagement. Perhaps they can, switch places or something, so that way, we'd be able to simultaneously pay attention to, this engagement over here that's like super interesting, while understanding the rest of the impact on the field, which is particularly important for stuff like ref calls, right?
Hmm.
Because like, if a ref comes and stops the action, for example, and you don't understand what's going on in the rest of the field because the camera is hyper focused on what's going on over here, you're not going to necessarily see that during that ref stoppage that's isolated in this corner, that like two dudes went down over there, right? So I mean, in terms of spectatorship, that creates a disconnect between what we're seeing and what's happening in the game.
Yeah, and when you're talking about refs, I know a lot of people now are talking about designing like a ref training program in America,
Hmm.
and I think having that kind of footage, you can incorporate, like, you can take those examples that are clearly shown and incorporate them into your lessons.
Yeah, that's very important. Having examples that you can refer to, that are not only particularly relevant, but that are good enough quality for you to be able to make out nuances. Because especially in armor, and in the press of so many fighters and so much movement, it's not like watching a 1v1 engagement where things are already difficult to see. And I've made reference to it before, but like a good contemporary example is Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren, if you're a UFC fan, where it's, even though there are camera angles from several sides and there was a ref right there, there's like, all kinds of debate as to whether or not Robbie Lawler was knocked unconscious during that choke.
Hmm.
Although many signs point to he was, but it's debatable that he wasn't, and it could be argued that it was a bad ref call, and it's hard to capture. So, even in a 1v1 circumstance, it can be very difficult for you to see something very particular, and I would say in a team circumstance, it can be substantially more so, because there's so many unexpected elements that are just suddenly added into the fray. So having, very good quality videography for ref calls is very important.
Hmm. Now, how do you think they're able to pull this off in Europe? What do they have that we don't?
Drones.
Hmm.
Drone footage. Buhurt League made use of drone footage for the Alexander Nevsky Cup, which I did a review on my channel. Go check it out. I did a 12v12 review on my channel a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago at this point. But the quality of film in those fights is excellent, because you see everything from a top-down perspective. It's
Hmm.
fantastic. I mean, the downside to that is that you miss out on some of the closer, more intricate nuances that you would get from like a straight-on perspective. But at the same time, you see the entirety of the field. And in a mass battle scenario, that's really what's more important, is to be able to see the movement of the whole field. So, I mean, like I suggested before, a possible way around that would be a picture-in-picture, camera A, camera B, where one camera focuses more intensely on one engagement, or like the particular action of the fight, or whatever the cameraman deems like most interesting, and there's another camera that, keeps an eye on the entirety of the situation.
Hmm. Um, so, love that answer. So, before we move on, why don't we take a quick message from here from the chat land. You're asking about whether this is going to get posted, and yes, I will be posting this all on YouTube later on. So fear not if you miss a small portion.
Shout out to Land. What up, buddy?
Yeah, thank you for coming. Um, and I do like the idea of putting body cams on the refs.
I'm not a huge fan of body cam footage in the sport. I don't know how relevant it would be, considering how the refs position themselves and like what they see. I think, like, there's an argument that was made at one point about whether or not we should be allowing refs to do video reviews of problematic plays, and it's like, in terms of what's on the line in our sport, I don't really think that that's necessary. I just think having better refs in general is the solution to a lot of like contestable situations. Is just having better, more experienced refs. That's a whole other issue though. The idea of like standardized refing and like ref culture and
Right.
how
There's
to
no minimum
encourage people to be
standard.
refs. Well, I mean, a lot of places are trying that. I know in Quebec here, we're trying to set a standard for refing. I know, like you mentioned in the States, that there are people who are trying to create like a ref system or a ref program or ref courses. I know HMB, for you to become a marshal, you have to pass several tests. I believe that's the case for IMCF as well. You have to pass tests in order to be considered a marshal. Although I could be wrong about the particularities of IMCF. Ringo would be in a better position, I believe, to answer a question like that.
Hmm. Okay. So, next question. Like, what is your personal experience with videography in Armored Combat? Like, how have you been represented in it?
So I've done a lot of filming of footage before I converted my YouTube channel to something where I create content. I was using my YouTube channel to just post training videos and stuff from my team. And when I joined the team, I found it bizarre that they weren't doing, as a competitive team, that they weren't regularly videotaping their own training and then using it to do breakdowns, because it's difficult to advance when you don't have a dedicated coach, because our environment isn't professionally organized, right? Like we don't have, not everybody has like a coach, and the coach has a vision and everybody trains the same way, right? So it's important for a fighter developing on their own to be able to review their own footage from an outsider's perspective, to say, oh, I fucked up here, or, oh, I could have done better there, oh, this move was really good, I got to remember to do that. And that helps you both on a tactical level, on a personal development level, on a humility level, because you see your own fuck ups, and it helps you on a technical level because you can see yourself improve and you can keep track of your progress, blah 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 blah, right? So that was something that I implemented at the beginning. And being I was didn't really put much thought into it. I had a tripod. I had like a tripod adapter for my phone, so I would set it up and just roll throughout practice, and then just upload fights when I got home. And for several years, that was really awesome. But when it came down to having, if I want to fight and I want to make sure the fight is captured properly, I need to make sure somebody is going to be filming, and it needs to be somebody who knows how to follow action in a fight. And, you can't always just set your stuff and forget your stuff, depending on what's going on and where you are and what your circumstances are. So in terms of events, it began to always require somebody to be there to film. And nobody really wanted to do that. People either wanted to fight or they wanted to do other stuff in conjunction with the event. So it often happens that events are captured by spectators, and that leads to somebody not necessarily capturing the fight in a way that's ideal for you, or a volunteer out of the kindness of their heart who decides to do that. And that's awesome. But at the same time, it doesn't really give you necessarily something of high quality that's useful in a spectator or review kind of a thing. It's cool as a home video, so it's like the worst thing is cool stuff not being captured, and that's happened to all of us in the sport. And it always happens that your coolest moves are never on tape. It's like, nobody was filming this event. Why was nobody filming this one event when everything else was filmed? Or like nobody was filming that one fight, or the camera broke, or like I ran out of batteries at that time, or the sound didn't work, or there's always
Or all
something
at once?
that like, yeah, that like ruins your like craziest moment. So it's like having as much on tape as possible, even in training and stuff for personal consumption, is important to me.
Hmm. Um, so, Boohurt League is able to do these videos. Uh, do they hire professionals, or do they just have their own media teams? Do you know?
I'm not 100% informed as to their internal mechanisms. I know that people who work for Boohurt League or work with Boohurt League, especially now during the pandemic, do all kinds of streamer related stuff. Like I know one of the guys who is one of the media organizers for Boohurt League. Shout out to Alexander Titov. He's a really cool dude. But I don't know internally how they function. What seemed to be the case for the ACW tournament that took place last week in Carolina Carnage, or the AMCF tournament, sorry, that took place last weekend, the case seemed to be that there was decent quality filming. It seemed to be that there was somebody with a professional setup on stage, and they were, or on site, and they were set up with cameras that were changing positions, and they had one camera set up to view the totality of events, and they had one camera that they were switching to see to look at the minutia of events, and they had overlays and stuff. It was quite a high quality production. On that side, I watched it with Ringo on stream. Go check it out on Ringo's stream, Trash Night Ringo. Shout out to Ringo. Um,
Ringo will
but
also be on this series of interviews at some
but
point.
it was very well done. It was very well done. Like I had very little complaints about the overall quality of video. I had
Yeah.
more complaints about like just the way the event was, how everything was positioned, the amount of people around the list, which is also like a problem in terms of clarity of vision, but it's not really like a problem in the same way as just quality video in the first place.
Hmm. Yeah, I watched it myself. I liked the majority of what they did. A- and did you watch both days?
No, I only watched Sunday. I watched a little bit from Saturday, but I was too busy with my own personal affairs. So the majority I watched on Sunday
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there was a
or on
clear
Friday, Saturday, or something.
production difference between the IMCF day and the HMB day.
I watched the HMB day.
Hmm.
That's the day that I watched, and yeah, Boohurt League was much more well organized. They did the streaming via YouTube rather than via Facebook Live, like from one of the teams that was there. See, it's stuff like that, like small, like there's small shit, like having like a good, like just basic organizational strategy and like a good selection of tools and shit. There's like basic shit you have to get right, but at the same time there's also like having the effort to go that step beyond and have quality. And for example, look at the overlays that Boohurt League uses, where as fights are starting, people are setting up, they throw up an overlay with the names of all of the fighters and stuff, and they
Hmm.
they require their fighters to have numbers so that the spectator can be like, oh, I know that dude, like it's that guy, or oh, that guy's awesome, I'm gonna go follow that dude, or like it just gives you, it humanizes who you're seeing and what's going on. It allows you just a greater perception of the depth of the event in front of you, rather than just like a smorgasbord of bodies and steel flying at each other.
Hmm.
It creates an experience that's like more relatable. When you can see shit better, you can understand shit better, and you can relate to it better. And I think that's important not only for fighters and people who are spectators, but if you're trying to attract people from outside into a sport that's not only extreme in nature, but like it's a very small community sport. It's a very expensive sport, and there's like a whole like world around it that isn't necessarily attractive to a lot of people. So if you're trying to like mainstream our sport, you have to make it accessible in like basic ways, right? Like the way you can see the shit.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think just being able to actually show it in a way that reflects the in-person experience a bit more. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So you want to steal the name cards. I want to go a step further. I want on live events to have the in list names and have those names like turn red or get crossed out or something when they fall.
I mean, Prime does something like that, where on their like overlays they have like little pictures of knights and stuff, and you could see like when a knight gets taken off, they like X out one
Yeah,
of the
they
knights
take a
so
little
that you
helm
can
off.
keep track of like who, how many players is up on each side. Like you could do something like that with numbers as well. I mean, there's a lot of ways to simplify that where you don't have to go to like, a super deep level. That's because you also have to make it something that's like there can't be too much information on the screen, because they're
Mm.
going to just detract from the fighting, which is what you want people to focus on in the first place. It's the most spectacular part of it. So too much clutter on the screen is bad. There's like a juste milieu. There's like a middle ground,
Mm.
like a comfortable middle ground that you have to find, that I think is essential.
Do you think that information would be better relayed through commentators?
Well, I mean, there's a combination of the two. You do both, right? And I think Boohurt League nails that like Goldilocks zone of just right, in terms of showing us the information and then commenting on it. Because while they flash it up, they can read off the names, for example, or they can talk about certain people who are of renown on each team. You can say, oh, this person's the captain. Or, oh, this guy is known for blah blah blah, and that guy is known for blah blah blah. Oh, these guys have a rivalry that stretches back to blah blah blah. It's like there are a lot of ways to create conversation for commentators out of those moments. So I think that it's a both and situation rather than an either or situation.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. All right. So let's move on. So outside of covering events, what could we be doing with the media? What would you like to see us do? Or
Like us as a community, or
us
us
as a
as
community and us as a production company. What
like
what
like
special
you
things
as
could we
Steel
bring?
Tiger Media?
Mm,
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on what kind of angle you want to cover, right? Like, for example, my content is focused on the fighter. It's like by the fighter for the fighter kind
yeah,
of
that
content.
in
It's
depth.
it's like, yeah, like my content is specifically like high level technical reviews of generally one-on-one engagements. I'm starting to branch into melee fighting as well, like just because it's a different kind of approach to review and breakdown between melee and 1v1s like pro fights. And my interest is also to try to broaden North America's horizon beyond our own borders. And I think the international scene, where specifically the Russian scene, the Ukrainian scene, where you see the highest level competition, is where we should be looking in order to inform ourselves, to propel ourselves to the next level. Because you have to see the top in order to be able to aim for the top. Otherwise, you're shooting into the clouds and you have no idea what you're shooting at, right?
Yeah.
And I think those teams, and like the clubs and teams that we see coming out of Eastern Europe and Russia are where we should be looking. So my content specifically focuses on that and trying to translate it over into English for a North American audience, because we don't have, it's like, Russians release a pro fight and there's no English commentary and it's between some Russian dudes that nobody knows about. So why are we going to watch it? It's not relevant to us at all. Even if the fighting is like they're the best fighters in the world, it's not relevant to you,
Well,
right? You're not going to sit through an hour of dudes talking Russian
what's
when you
missing
don't understand it.
so much to me is the story, in these fights, and you lose a lot of that when you don't know the people, you don't get to learn their background, uh, and you don't know where they're going from them. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And in my content, I try to bridge that gap to the extent that I can, because obviously I don't know many of these people myself, right? And some people I've reached out to through the glory of the interwebs. I've reached out to some people and made contacts, and throughout the international Boohurt community, because it's so small, you're able to find your way across to people relatively easily. But as our community grows, that's going to become more and more difficult. But that's why I try to focus not necessarily on the individuals and more on the type of fighting that we're seeing there. And it's like every now and then I'll be like, oh, I found out this about this guy and he's known for fighting like this, and that's really important because of blah blah blah, and he comes from this team, and this team is known for fighting like this, right? So
mm,
it's like you try to bridge that human gap in whatever small way you can, but I really try to focus specifically on the fighting. So I try to take it to that like very granular level where we're looking at minutia, and it's not super accessible. So it depends what you want to see, right? If you look at somebody like Ringo, for example, Ringo produces a lot of excellent content, and Ringo is like in a middle zone where there's a certain level of accessibility that I don't have in his content, right? But at the same time, Ringo is able to break down high level concepts in ways that people who don't necessarily have a particularly developed technical library or very high level understanding of nomenclature can grab onto and learn to roll with. If you look at Paul the Barbarian, for example, who's another great content creator, one of the bigger ones in our community, his content is more focused on beginner and intermediate fighters, right? So it's like you get like a whole range, and you can see where the popularity spectrum is on that and who gets approached by what kind of viewer, and that's really important to consider as well. So, I mean, to say what do you want, right, or what do you need? Well, I think the community, in terms of viewership, there's a lot that's missing. Like we don't have video that specifically goes that's like from one source from like a league or something that specifically goes into all of the different teams like we see with Boohurt League or with WMFC, where you see like videos specifically about a fighter,
mm,
their stats and like some of their big moments and stuff, or like videos about teams, like when Prime is coming up, and Prime, they show you like videos about all of the different teams, and they're like, these are all the different dudes on the teams. You get like 1 minute video about each fighter, cool thing they've done, and like some like random
mm.
stats and some shit,
I love
make them
those.
look impressive. Yeah, that's cool,
So much hype.
right? So it's like we don't have stuff like that. We have a bunch of dudes doing technique. We have a bunch of dudes doing beginner content. We have a bunch of dudes doing equipment reviews and like stuff about like, oh, you have to know this like random thing about this. You have Max Yun. Max Yun is becoming very popular over here in the West, but he's already popular in the East. Russian guy from Bern doing all kinds of different
Mm.
content about the HMB scene in general. So it's like there's still a lot of space. Content creation in our community is very very new, and you can start getting your toe in the water with just a couple videos here. So it's like there's a lot of different space for you to grow. Just depends who you want to aim at. And if you want to aim outside the field, I mean, that's a big challenge. If you want to aim outside our community and try to attract people to it, it's the biggest challenge that everybody faces.
Hmm. Which, luckily, is the challenge I'm trying to face.
I mean,
So,
it's not a it's a great goal. It's a
hmm,
great goal to try to make it a sport that spectators from outside can understand. And there's a lot of hurdles to accomplishing that, and definitely good quality centralized video is one of them.
hmm. Now, I have a thought about all our different content creators. Is there a way that we could, we're doing a lot of, showing up on each other's streams and stuff like that. Um, is there more we can do to get that sort of community all around?
What do you mean, like create like a network?
Sure. I mean,
Because
that would
that
be
idea
one
that
option.
idea has been floated. That I've also been partial to conversations about that idea, and that's like a thing that people are talking about. It could be an interesting concept. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but definitely losing independence in terms of my own production is not something that I'm particularly angling for.
Hmm.
It depends on what our goal is as a community. There could also be the option of creating a repository for communal content, right? So it's like if I were to go on Ringo's channel, we could post it, you know, on a communal channel where people can go and see like, communal stuff. But at the same time, it's like you're going to fracture viewership so much that it's like where are people going to go to see what? And I'm not saying it's a scramble for viewers. Like
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't
in
think
it
we're
for.
there.
I'm not scrambling for. I'm not scrambling for subs. Two, I'm not in it for subs. It's a passion project for me, and those who are in are welcome to join me. And I extend that branch to whomever wants to come along for the ride. But I'm not in a position, one, to be profiting from this financially, or two, seeking to be a shark. So it's difficult for me to say in terms of like a long term what the impacts of that would be. Fundamentally, I'm open to it.
Hmm.
We'll see.
Okay. So that's all I have. This has been about half an hour, which is what I was shooting for. Um,
Sweet.
do you have any other thoughts on media that you want to share?
No, I mean, the only thing I would say is come check me out at Bear Blackspear at YouTube, or Bear Blackspear on Facebook if you're interested in high level content, both for melees, singles, techniques, equipment reviews, anything Boohurt HMB related. Come check me out. You can also add me on Facebook, send me a message if you have any questions. I'm glad to answer, engage with the community at any time. And come check out, please feel free to check out Paul the Barbarian as well. Shout out, and Trash Night Ringo as well.
Mm-hmm.
And be sure to like and follow Steel Tiger Media as well. Promote our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're watching and you've gotten this far, you're probably interested enough that you might as well go ahead and follow, because there's going to be even more of this content coming forward.
And I just want to say thanks for having me on, man.
Oh,
I'm
my
happy to be
pleasure.
the first. I'm happy to be your first.
Well, you
I hope
never
it
forget
wasn't.
your
I hope.
first.
I hope I was gentle.
Hmm.
I hope I was gentle. I know I can be a bit rough sometimes, so I hope I was a good one that's going to be memorable for you for years to come.
Always a gentleman.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on, and everybody have yourselves a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.